Namaskar and welcome to In Focus. Now he is India's youngest MP and of course he's Biju Patnaik's son, but no one had ever thought he would enter politics. However, now that he's taken the plunge, what made him do it? How has it changed his attitudes and opinions, and what does the future hold? Here to shed light on those questions is India's youngest MP, Janata Dal's Naveen Patnaik. Mr. Patnaik, what made you at the age of 50 suddenly take up politics?
I think 50 is a good age to enter politics. You're mature then. Hopefully there's some wisdom there. There's some experience there. So, and in my profession, as you know, I've been a writer, Karan. And in my profession, it's the job of a writer, as you know, to feel the pulse, to keep his ear to the ground and feel the pulse of the people. Also, a writer, when he does books, has to do a great deal of research, and research makes you get to the root of a problem.
So in a sense, politics is a continuation of writing by another name.
It's not writing by another name, but you can adapt to that new profession with a lot of assets from your old one.
Was this always a lurking ambition? After all, you do come from a political family.
Not a lurking ambition, certainly not. But it must have been there in this subconscious, because when I went campaigning, I took to it like a duck to water.
But did you find yourself propelled by circumstances, your father's death, or had you always said to yourself, one day I'll do it, and then the opportunity came?
Never did I say one day, never did I think that one day I'll do it. And you're right about the time of father's passing away, when my brother, my sister and I went to Orissa for his cremation and his ceremonies. Wherever we went, the people said, please, one of you, remain in Orissa. Please enter politics. Your father gave us courage, he gave us hope.
But before you ever entered politics, was there a moment when you had second thoughts, when there was hesitation, doubt?
You mean this time, as I've got into politics? Yeah. There was no time, because the people's feeling, then the Janata Dal party in the state, they requested me to stand. Also in the center, the Janata Dal wanted me to stand.
So you never had any doubt about actually doing it?
No. Once I decided I was going to do it, I did it.
Okay, then let me, with your permission, turn not nasty, but a little cynical. You must have read in the papers people saying, Naveen Patnaik's just another dynasty. He's a great statesman, a great politician's son, stepping into daddy's shoes, stealing daddy's advantages without having really earned them. How do you answer them?
Well, let me tell you this. I think what I have got is not my father's privileges, but his responsibilities. And also, remember when you talk about dynasties, of course, in the election, in my constituency of Aska, of course they voted a great deal for their love and regard for father. But on the other hand, my father was not in power when I entered politics, and he never groomed any of his children for politics. And when I fought the election was against a party in power in the state.
So when you read in the newspapers that they're comparing you to Rajiv or Sanjay, or Indira who succeeded Nehru, and they're saying that the Patnaiks have done the same thing, how do you reply to them?
Well, they were all groomed by their parents or their mother for politics, and when they were in power. That's not the case with me. I was never groomed to be in politics. That sort of nepotism my father did not believe in.
Would he have wanted you to succeed him as an MP?
I don't think it would have crossed his mind.
You never discussed it?
But one thing about father, if anyone was prepared to do good work, he would never discourage them.
But you never discussed any political future that you might have with him?
Never.
So he had never been approached by you, asked by you, should I do this? Would you advise I step into your shoes?
Never. Where did the question arise?
Let me push this a little. People in Delhi often tend to have an attitude towards politicians. They tend to say that this is a contemptuous profession. These are people who equivocate with morality. Did you ever share that attitude before you became an MP?
No, because I have to say something, Karan, that naturally from birth, one has seen freedom fighters, prime ministers, politicians of every ilk going to father's side of the house. I mean, you know, going to his rooms, to his office, etc. And I have seen them. And they're like politics is like any profession. There are good people in it, there are bad people in it, and there are indifferent people in it. like in any profession, indeed in yours too, the media.
But was there not a time when perhaps you saw or you recognized more of the bad, and is there not a case now to say that suddenly you've become more aware of the good?
Listen, I never thought, as I repeat to you, I never thought that they were all bad. Never. Why should I?
Did you ever, as many people in Delhi do, criticize the Gandhis for having succeeded one after another into the prime ministership?
Many, yes.
So you did criticize them for that?
But I haven't become the prime minister.
No, but would you say there's an element then perhaps of hypocrisy in the fact that you've succeeded your father, they succeeded their mother and their father?
No, I don't see it as hypocrisy. I think, as I'll repeat again, that anyone who goes in with a clean heart and is prepared to do work for his constituents, that's the primary thing, isn't it? Not any kind of calculation, because this was not manipulated or calculated. I plunged into it.
So as you put it, the proof of the pudding is in the sincerity of purpose you bring to the job.
The work that I can do for my constituency, for the people of my constituency, that those results will prove what it is, isn't it?
There's no doubt about the fact that in a very real sense, you are a fresh breath of air. You're a new entrant into the whole thing. What would you then say are the qualities, the virtues that you bring to politics?
Because I'm there to absorb the problems of my constituency. May I speak about my constituency for a moment?
Of course.
There's a tremendous water shortage there. There have been very bad rainfall for 2 years. Drinking water is scarce. Water for irrigation is virtually non-existent. And this, for farmers, my constituency is almost completely rural. There's some small towns, but 80% of it approximately you would consider as rural. And the farmers of this constituency had such a brilliant method of water conservation that in the British days, they took this method across the sea to Burma to use. And look, because of mismanagement now, administrative mismanagement, the river beds are dry. The actual river beds are dry. I've seen people digging for subsoil water to drink. Think of the water-related diseases. The reservoirs leaking. The water tanks, think of disease again, are contaminated. The village water tanks.
As you describe them, those are daunting problems.
Yeah.
What makes you believe that a new person like yourself can tackle them?
Because I have the enthusiasm. I'm fresh. I don't have the cynicism.
But do you have the experience, do you have the political skill, do you have the capacity to network within politics, to influence ministers, all of which is perhaps more important?
I'm here in Delhi. I leave in the next 2 or 3 days for my constituency. Why do you think I'm in Delhi? I'm running to, knocking on every door that I can about the water problem and the health problem. Because when I went campaigning, I saw what was happening. And this is what I desire to tackle, and I hope I'll be able to do something about it.
And you think that your enthusiasm will somehow be able to compensate for the absence of experience and skill when it comes to tackling Askar's problems?
Water there is a problem which should be dealt with on a war footing. I don't have the time now to think so much. I must just get on with the work.
All right, when you went to Askar, it's a rural constituency
Mainly
in Orissa.
Yeah.
How conscious were you of the fact that here you are, a westernized urban India, wandering into rural Orissa, and that perhaps you weren't quite a fit?
I wasn't quite what, sorry?
The perfect fit for the constituency.
Look, fit or no fit, I keep saying something has to be done, and I'm prepared to do it, to work for it.
You know, that's a wonderful phrase, something has to be done. Edward VIII used to use it when he went and visited the coal mines, and it was parodied when he used it. You're not a little worried that you might sound as if you're parodying him?
Well, listen, I've never done that kind of fashionable, detailed history, so I don't think it's a question worth answering. It's too remote.
What about something else? Do you speak Odia?
A little, yes. And I intend to learn it very fast, because if I have to communicate with the people's problems, I have to speak it fluently.
How have you been communicating at the moment?
Odia and Hindi. Odia and Hindi.
Do you ever feel that...
A lot of people speak Hindi there, a lot.
Did you ever feel that there was a language barrier between you and them?
No, not at all. I didn't, because people can understand Hindi. It's my job to learn Odia first. After all, it's the mother tongue from the state I was born in. So it's my job, because my schooling, my working, my university were all out of Orissa, you see.
I can understand how you would have been able to reach out to the constituency. After all, they were your father's constituents. But what about when you were dealing with the local Janata Dal party in Orissa? There, the absence of Oriya as a fluent language must have been telling.
No, they were very obliging to speak to me in Hindi. And I must learn Oriya fast. I must learn it really fast. But the other thing is our local Janata Dal people, from our major leaders down to the young workers, enthusiastic, they worked so hard.
When you were dealing with them, were you conscious that you were Biju Patnaik's son, or do you feel by now you've won their respect as the new Janata Dal MP?
I will win the respect of the Janata Dal and of the people of the constituency only when I can produce some results as far as work is concerned.
You're absolutely certain that it has to be won on merit rather than something that you inherit from your father?
Indeed, it has to be won on merit.
How long do you give yourself to prove that you're up to the job you've taken up?
I'm thinking about it every day. Like one thing about father, he did keep Orissa's name in the conscience of the nation. I have been voted to parliament. I have to work for the needs of my constituents, and my other job is to keep Orissa's name in the forefront of the nation.
But have you set yourself a deadline by when you meet some of the targets you're talking about, providing water, putting right reservoirs that are leaking? I mean, is there a deadline that you set?
These are colossal tasks. There is another government. It's not a Janata Dal government in Orissa.
But there is a Janata Dal Prime Minister, and it is the single biggest party in the government.
Indeed, that's true. But as you know, a lot of problems, the majority of problems are dealt with by the state government. And the state government, I'm afraid to say, has been apathetic and cynical. So one has to tackle that from that end. One has to tackle the problems from my constituency, from the center as well. And one has to bring to the forefront the problems there. I mean, these problems also exist in other parts of the country.
Isn't that the sort of excuse politicians always make? It's not my party in power, I can't help it.
Listen, I'll try and do my best with our party in power in the center and without our party in power in the state.
At that point, I'm afraid we're going to have to take a commercial break, but I want to continue this discussion in just a moment. Don't go away, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with India's newest MP, Naveen Patnaik. Mr. Patnaik, let's talk a little bit about your party, the Janata Dal. Are you dismayed by the
Please, first of all, before we begin anything, please call me Naveen, and may I call you Karan?
Of course, with pleasure.
As I have been doing earlier.
Naveen, in that case, let's talk about your party, the Janata Dal. Are you dismayed by the shenanigans going on at the moment?
Look, I think a coalition is a very natural mirror of India. You know, coalition governments is a very natural image of India.
Forgive me, but I'm talking about the Janata Dal, not the UF. Are you dismayed by the shenanigans going on over the Janata Dal presidential election?
You didn't permit me to finish my answer, which is that, you see, we are going through an evolution in democracy. We are only 50 years we've been a republic. Think of England, which has been a democracy for more than 1,000 years. Think of America, which has been a democracy for 200 years. Remember their ups and downs, the history, the evolution of democracy. Our party is one in which it is democratic. That's why you're hearing of these problems. They will be resolved. Of course they will. But this is an evolution in democracy.
So you're saying that at our stage of evolutionary progress, we deserve the Lalu Prasad Yadavs, or the Sharad Yadavs, or the party tearing itself apart.
You mustn't forget that both the Mr. Yadavs you're discussing represent people in the country. I mean, they are leaders also of various sects, people in this country.
Let me ask you a question I've asked many of your party colleagues. Lalu Prasad Yadav is a gentleman who stands indicted in the eyes of the CBI. They've requested permission from the Bihar governor to prosecute and charge sheet him. Do you believe that in the circumstances he should resign as Chief Minister of Bihar?
I'm not prepared to answer these questions because they're all in the courts.
But it's not a question of legal matters I'm asking, it's a question of propriety. Do you think the proper thing for someone who is Chief Minister of Bihar who holds the reputation of a very high institution in his hands, do you think the proper thing for him would be to resign?
It's up to the courts and justice to decide that, not for me as the freshest and junior-most member of parliament in the Lok Sabha.
If you were in his position, would you have chosen to step down?
I'm not going to let my imagination run riot.
Let me rephrase myself. What I'm trying to find out is what your attitude is, not to the legal issue of whether he's guilty or not, but to the simple moral question: how should a leader who is indicted behave? Is it proper in these circumstances to step down and let a process clear the way, or should you cling on to office to the end?
I don't want to discuss Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav, but when you ask a question in general, people must always do good, never bad.
Interpret that for me. What do you mean by good?
Well, you know what good is.
Does that mean stepping down to allow a process to clear the way?
I don't know enough about it, so you mustn't ask me that question. I give you a general answer, that people must always, when you are elected to office, you must always try and do good for the people you elected for in the most just, honest way. You must serve them, you must do service for them. When you're elected to office, it's not that you're suddenly in a position of power. You should always act as a servant of the people. That's why you're elected to office.
Last week, Mr. Yadav gave an interview to InFocus. And in the interview, he said that even if he was charge-sheeted, he would not step down. Now, Mr. Yadav also happens to be president of your party. Do you think that's a right and proper attitude for the president of your party to have?
I'm afraid I haven't seen that program, so I can't reply to that question.
Let me then phrase it differently. Do you aspire to the morals of an earlier age of Indian politicians and politics, as perhaps exampled by your father?
Of course I do. To me, the people who I admire, and more than admire, whom I respect, whom I'm awe-stricken by, is Mahatma Gandhi, Tagore, Sarojini Naidu. Of course, we were all inspired by thoughts by their work, their thoughts.
And what about people like Lal Bahadur Shastri?
He was a great man.
Did he not resign as railway minister when there was just a simple train crash because he felt that the dignity of the office he holds requires standing down?
Well, he was a great man. I repeat that.
So would you say that today's politicians who behave differently are not as great?
You look all over the world. There are no great leaders in the world. I mean, everything, there are none of the great historic figures. And at that time, it was extraordinary, at the time of the freedom struggle. It threw up a great deal of people people who had vision, who had a cause.
You come to politics wanting to be a fresh breath of air. You're bringing enthusiasm, you're bringing openness. Why are you suddenly, when I'm talking about your party president and your party, clamming up? Suddenly...
I'm not clamming up. I don't know enough about it to give you an answer.
You don't know enough about the situation your party president finds himself in?
I do. I know quite a lot about it, but I have been very busy till the last 3 days in the campaign.
Aren't you suddenly finding that it's politically not expedient to express an opinion about your party president? Isn't that the problem?
No, may I give you an honest answer to that? I've just come back from campaigning in my constituency. I really don't know enough about it. The question you're asking me.
That also suggests that at some point when you think you know enough about it, you'll unhesitatingly express your opinion.
Of course I will.
Even if it happens to go against the grain of Mr. Yadav's own opinion.
Let's keep Mr. Yadav out of it. Of course I'm going to express my opinion, but I can only express my opinion when I know the subject thoroughly.
And not
till then, I don't have a right to express an opinion.
MPs are often remembered not just for the work they do in their constituency, which is something you've said you're determined to do. They're also remembered for the causes that they espouse. Are there any that you plan to take up?
I think the manifesto of the Janata Dal is enough of a cause. There's good things in it.
These days there are so many political manifestos, and the one that the Janata Dal talks most about is in fact not its own manifesto, but what's called the Common Minimum Program. So what bit of the Janata Dal manifesto do you find so enlightening?
That it's centrist and that it's secular.
I thought yours was officially a socialist party.
Yes, but I mean, yes, of course it is.
So then are you redefining socialism as centrism?
Look, everything any party, and especially the Janata Dal, wants to do is for the good of the country. You can always, be it slightly this way or that way, dealing for the day-to-day problems. You have to be flexible. Everyone has to be flexible to deal with the aspirations and the needs of the country.
Mr. Patnaik, is there any party in India that isn't dealing, as it claims, with the good of the people and isn't flexible in doing so? Every single party claims that.
They may do so, but ours is a democratic party where the voice of the people in the party and outside can be heard.
At the moment, talking about democracy, the process of choosing a president is actually tearing the party apart.
I'm sure it will be resolved.
How can you say that with certainty?
I have a feeling. It's a personal feeling. Every individual has a feeling. I have a feeling it will be resolved.
And will it be resolved with the party having been broken into two?
I don't think so.
Do you think that this is damaging the party?
But I'll repeat what I said before. It is an evolution. It's a democratic evolution. I'm sure it will be resolved.
What about your own present position in politics? Do you see this as a job, or is this the beginning of a new career?
I see it as a job as far as the work is concerned, and we know it's a new career, isn't it?
So you intend to stand for MP at the next elections and the ones after that and thereon forever?
My intentions are clear. I have entered politics, and I wish to do this work.
Then what happens to the earlier pursuits that were, in a sense, a profession for you, writing? Are those now in abeyance, or is that chapter closed?
When I get the time, and I hope I do, I may not. Of course, I'm going to continue with my profession of writing.
Do you aspire to be a minister?
I think everyone in politics aspires to be a minister.
Do you expect to be a minister?
How can I expect anything? It's not in my hands.
Do you think you will be during this present parliament?
Who knows?
So you're
It's
leaving it open.
anyone's guess.
But you are leaving it open, you're not saying no.
Look, no one's offered me anything, so what am I to say yes or no to?
Is there a particular ministry that you would want more than any other?
Let's stop talking about ministries. Let's talk about what I consider as my strength. My work is always related to culture, to ecology. And out of culture and ecology come the roots of all problems. Also, I'm so lucky to come from a state which culture is intact. It's layers and layers of richness is there.
So if you had to be a minister, you'd like to have a ministry that would allow you to tackle all these areas?
I said, let's keep ministries out of this conversation.
I know, but I didn't agree necessarily.
I'm just talking, my mind has now gone to my interests.
One last question. Your maiden speech is something that still lies ahead of you in Parliament. Does the prospect of standing up in front of 540 people, every single one of them looking at Biju Patnaik's son and wanting to see how he performs, does that worry you?
Not at all. Once I'm completely clear about the problems of the constituency I represent, which is a microcosm of the state of Orissa, I know I'll have the confidence to talk about that.
On that note, Mr. Patnaik, thank you very much for talking so openly to InFocus.
Thank you, Karan.
That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another interviewee. But for today, from the residence of Naveen Patnaik in New Delhi, goodbye.